Greetings, greetings, greetings. Abby Osho here, personal storytelling and leadership coach, BAFTA award-winning retreat creator, author and speaker. And today I want to talk about leadership, self-love and saying no. And I know that we all have phases on our leadership journey. And I remember one of mine was very much about always saying yes to everything. And so when I was invited around the table, I would be a little bit in awe of like, oh my gosh, they've invited me around the table. That's amazing. I've got to say yes. And so I would spend my time going to different events, contributing, showing up all of the time. And there were many times when, in all honesty, I'd get there and I would think, this is not for me. This is not my vibe. This is not my community. Like, what am I doing here? But I'd accepted the invitation. And so what would happen was I would, rather than being myself, I was performing. I was performing as opposed to being present. And I did this for some time because I put pressure on myself to always say yes. If I had an invitation, it would be rude of me not to say yes. So I would always say yes. And then there came a time that I had to really realign with myself and say, what are you doing? And what I was doing was I was showing up from a place of scarcity. I was showing up partially because there was still bits of me back then that I was definitely hiding about myself, that I hadn't accepted in terms of who I was. So I was just showing up anywhere and everywhere. And then there came that refinement time when I started to really look at invites that I was getting and asking a few more questions rather than just saying yes and accepting. And I want to put this into context because at the very beginning of our leadership journey, our coaching journey, our therapy journey, whatever it is that we're beginning, it is a little bit like saying yes to everything. Because we're also trying to find ourselves and what works for us and what doesn't work for us and what our values are. And so I get that. For me, it went on for quite a long time though, until it didn't. And I started to discern and be much more confident in my decisions about where I wanted to show up, around whose table, and what was the conversation, what was the flow, what were the discussions, where were these people on their own journeys of leadership. And so it started to become, I guess, more interesting for me, because then it was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go because I can show up as all of me. I'm not having to perform. I'm not having to shape shift. I'm not having to code switch. I will show up as me. And I want to add to that showing up as me came over time. It came because I was willing to accept more of myself. And rather than thinking, oh, this is how I should show up as a leader, or when I'm looking at this community and what they want and what they're speaking about, I should probably show up in this way because that way I'll be more accepted. I would be more liked. So all of that self-acceptance, wanting to please, wanting to like, all of those things were coming up when I was saying yes to those invitations. When I stopped saying yes to those types of invitations and started to show more love to myself and started to understand more about who I was becoming, then I could make, it felt to me, much better, much more informed decisions about whose table I chose and desired to be around. And something really interesting happened. This was literally a couple of weeks ago. And it's taken me a little bit of time to process it, but I really want to speak about it because I think it's important. And some of you listening to this on the replay would have been in these situations, been in these scenarios. Many of us would have as leaders or as storytellers. So I was offered quite an incredible proposal for work, I guess, that would fall into alignment with the kind of work I do around personal storytelling, etc. And this work came with a number of caveats, what I could say, what I couldn't say. And I read through it and I thought, oh God, this will be great for my visibility. It'll be great for me building my community. I get an opportunity to be on stage and to really talk into my beliefs around personal storytelling and the power of personal story. And, when we show up as ourselves, we show up as the greatest version of who we're becoming, all of those things. And there was something that was really niggling me, and I kept going backwards and forwards, logging on, reading the proposal, reading what they'd suggested, etc. And on paper, it did look good, but there was something underneath it that didn't quite sit in alignment with who I was now. And I was thinking, oh man, this is the kind of opportunity that a couple of years ago I'd have been like, yeah, I'm on it, I'm all over it. Where do I sign? Send it back. And here comes the growth part. And now when I look at how part of my voice the requirement would have been to silence part of my voice, silence part of my truth, in order to show up in a way that they felt they wanted me to. And I couldn't do it. It had to be a no. It wasn't an easy no. Let's not get it twisted. It wasn't an easy no. In fact, it was a challenging no. And my integrity and my voice and my love for self and my soul were all saying to me, Abby, this doesn't have your name written on it. This is for somebody else. And to let it go. And there was a part of me that wanted to kind of override that and see if I could ride it through, but it wasn't. It really wasn't for me. And so I made that decision to put the love for myself, the love for my voice, the love for the fullness of who I am and who I'm becoming before anything else. I made a decision that my values and my integrity, no matter what, those were the things that were most important for me in terms of how I show up now, in terms of how I show up as my future self. All of those things came into play for me, and it was so interesting. And so when I kind of signed the no and, created the response around why it was a no for me, there was a feeling of anxiousness, I guess would be the right word. And there was also, it was like a split feeling of anxiousness and freedom. Anxious because, was this the right decision? But freedom because I knew it was the right decision. I knew that coming home to myself, that being aligned with my story, in the story that I was choosing to be in, with my values staying intact, it was always going to outweigh anything else. And so there's times when we can't always see how we've grown, how much more aware of ourselves we've become, but it's moments like that that I knew, being in this awareness, doing this work, growing and expanding, these were all the things that were coming up. This is what the embodiment of that actually looked like. And so I know that that was absolutely the right decision. And I'm here sharing it with you now. And I would love to find out, leave it in the comments if anything like that has ever happened to you, or if you would like to discuss anything like that further. I'd love to have a one-to-one talk with you. So if that's been of some use today, I'd love to hear it. And even if it isn't today, but there'll be a time potentially on your leadership journey when something similar is going to happen, you've got something else, a little memory, hopefully, that you can fall back on, and then make your decision, not from a place of scarcity, but from love for yourself and from knowing that you are fully integrated with who you're becoming. And that's the journey, and that's the work that we continue to do. Stay blessed. Thanks for being here. Bye now.